obviously I am still under the confidentiality agreement. I am not sure how long that lasts. After this is over, I would like to tell you everything, because if you think what you saw yesterday was bad, imagine what we've been doing for the last 2 months. Use your imagination. It might have been the same or worse. So I'm going to have my lawyer look at it. Well, the Fix SLP lawyer will have him look at it. And so thank you for sustaining partners. For those of you that have started giving in the last 2 days, thank you. The biggest expense is the lawyer that I use. Anyway, I was as cool as a cucumber yesterday. I was actually fine. I woke up with zero nerves. I had zero nerves during that thing. I had zero nerves after. And then I started reading all of your compliments and I started getting anxiety. I've never talked about this before. I've kept it very separate from Fix SLP, but I think now is the time for me to tell you. And if you've seen comments here and there, or just sometimes the way I talk, maybe you've picked up on it, but I am a person of very deep faith, and I respect and engage with many different faiths, but I am very specifically a Christian, and I have a pretty active prayer life. So I've been in prayer about this for a long time, and I feel like what you saw me do yesterday was not of me. I just prayed that God would give me the wisdom and the words to do what I needed to do, and I feel like that's what happened. So I thought about it and I was like, well, football players are like this after a touchdown. And so that's kind of what I want to do. Fix SLP isn't about my faith, but I really feel like that's how I got through yesterday. So I wanted to acknowledge that, because I think that's why I was getting anxiety, because I really don't feel like I was responsible for the way that I behaved, but maybe I was. And I think I behaved well. You've never seen that person. I also want to recognize the team. You saw the Meet the Team post. I want to specifically thank Phil, Josh, Kathleen from Adler Therapy, and Lori from Metro EHS. Phil and Lori were the ones that approached me first and brought me on simply to get the word out. And from the beginning, that was the arrangement. And then it became very clear as we moved through that I had the skill to help write the application and do some other things and do what you saw me do yesterday. So it was really nice to be in a position where I could help like that. With that being said, I also like to be transparent. And it was in the disclosures. If you were there at the beginning, you heard me say I was acting as a consultant. I was paid as a consultant because there were weeks in this process where this was all I did. I couldn't work. We would have meetings at all hours of the day, and Fix SLP was meant to get information out, but it cannot be my full-time free job, right? So they recognized the value that I was bringing and they paid me as a consultant. I wanted to give that disclosure because afterwards, our friends at ASHA began to disparage me by name to speech-language pathologists who were in the room, not affiliated with us, and said Jeanette Benigas is only doing this for money. I think that couldn't be further from the truth. I don't feel like I owe anyone an explanation, but I did want to be transparent that for part of this process, I was paid as a consultant. I hope that can happen again, because the more I get paid, the more I can do this. So I also want to thank all of you for supporting. For those of you who have shared, who have liked, who have commented, who wrote letters, who talked about it with your employers or your state associations or your friends, your colleagues, your classmates, your former classmates, your professors, spreading the word helped. And I felt like it was kind of a slap in the face. The AMA, and I don't feel like this is outside of the non-disclosure, but mention was made that it wasn't about numbers. But before going into this, we knew that they have never received as many letters in support. There were very few non-supportive letters as they got from SLPs. And I think that shows the power of what this group can do when we put our minds to it. I think that is significant. That in a room full of doctors, in 2 days, we're listening about AI for surgery and heart surgeries and veins and all of these things. But us little SLPs came together and sent more letters than they've ever seen during the open comment period. And I think that's really important, and I don't think we should miss that. Also, anytime they were editing, I could see the numbers. So there were screens in front of us, and it was showing the numbers of people online. And I imagine that it was lower by the time we got to the table, because I sent the text to say, okay, we're up. And then I had to walk to the table and get situated. We didn't see that number until we were a little ways into it. But by the time I saw it, it was as many as 617 people online, all the way up into the 900s at one point, which I think is amazing. I know that there were people, like there were editorial panel members online, so that 900 was not all us. I would have loved to have known what that number was for all of the other talks. I think probably it's also the highest number of viewers they've ever had. We also had people in the room, which was awesome. So I don't want us to miss this moment in time, because we came together, and win or lose, we did something very significant in history, and it deserves to be appreciated and congratulated. So all of you that supported, thank you, because you helped move this forward. If you sent me coffee or a drink last night or today, I clearly look very tired. Thank you. I needed that little pick me up. Okay. So there are some things that I can say. I want to start with kind of where I was at in this process, explain things that happened that I think are fine to give to the public. And if you were watching, then it'll help you understand a little more too. So when we walked to that table, we thought we were introducing and discussing option A, which was the original application that you all made comments on, and option B, which was our compromise. I don't feel comfortable saying it on here, but if you were paying attention, the man who introduced us told you how option B came about. And so that's what we did, with the understanding that both would be presented. On the first day, we noticed that a lot of people were pulling applications, and we were just baffled, because why would you go through so much work? Because this is a lot of work. Why would you go through all of this work and pull your application 15 minutes before you're supposed to go in front of the panel? Afterwards, what I learned, because I went and talked to one of our advisors, and she said, well, I told you guys the panel can do whatever they want. And while we understood that, I guess what we didn't understand was that means they can also pull your proposal. And that's what happened. And she said, it's good that you had the other option, because they can write their own options. And that is why people pull their applications at last minute, because they are given those revisions and changes for the new option. And if they don't like them, they have to pull the application, because if it's voted through, they're stuck with it. So it's better to pull it, rework, and then re-present it in 5 months or however often they do these meetings. So they didn't write a new option for us. They pulled our original choice. And in hindsight, as we were debriefing, you saw what happened in that room. You saw what some of those doctors were doing. We think we wouldn't have stood a chance with option A. Again, what we were doing to rescind or change something that had been approved and been approved so close. You know, it's not like we did this years later. We did this months later. We don't think A would have passed. In hindsight, it's better that we wrote the option, gave it to them, and they entertained it and put it forward, because it could have gone really sideways. So that's what happened. But they didn't tell us that that's what happened. And you saw me try to clarify not once, but twice. So when we finally did get that comment, none of us were expecting that. Now, then, as we moved on, you got a text that said, stop talking about time. The reason I said that was because these questions were starting to fight against our option. You were making the case for like why maybe none of this should work. And if none of this should work, they're just going to stick with ASHA's option. What we were told in option B was we cannot change the valuation of the code. So we can slightly change language of the codes or the introduction or whatever ASHA did that was approved. We could change some of that. But if we were changing value, then we couldn't do it. And changing the time would change the value. If we added time, if we subtracted time, the valuation process is done. Which leads me to this next comment. ASHA is now setting the stage to blame me for bad valuation, okay? Just so we put that out there. My name was brought up, again, immediately after the talk by our national organization to SLPs in attendance and said what Jeanette did today, what this group did today, what SLPs did today have ruined our chance for a good valuation. If you were in that meeting, you saw how it ended, right? We didn't write those codes, ma'am. You did, okay? So we're not going to allow that narrative and gaslighting from our national organization to happen because they didn't like people fighting back. If they were worried about the valuation of their codes, they should have written better codes, right? This was happening before I was even back to the hotel in Fix SLP content. I knew when I saw a member of ASHA's HCEC, because before the very first post I ever made, I spent like 4 hours researching every single one of them so I understood who was on that committee and what happened. So when I saw him, I knew exactly who he was. He didn't disclose who he was or what he was doing. He was just bashing fearless fixers for ruining their chances of getting a good valuation. So I started taking screenshots because we were going to call him out. If you're going to come into our territory, you better be ready. So I called him out and said, please tell us more. As a member of the HCEC who wrote these codes, tell us more about why you think we're not going to get a good valuation now when the codes didn't change, okay? So he deleted. I have screenshots of all of that. But again, he was there setting the stage that this was my fault, our table's fault, your fault for writing all those. It's our fault for just not trusting them through the process, right? The entire reason we were even allowed to do that was because they did not follow the process. And you might have heard that. And that's something that we learned over this weekend and throughout this process is the AMA very much works with and trusts that national membership organizations have the best interest of their members at heart and are including those members in the process. We were not included. And there was a timeline in which we were supposed to be included. We were not included. And it was the only reason why we were allowed to submit our first application. If they had followed the process, we would not have been allowed to do that. Otherwise, people would always be doing stuff like that. And it's why it's so rare, because there's a process and they're protecting these organizations. So by us coming forward like that, they didn't announce what happened. They didn't explain this to the panel or the doctors. So it's rare we're here doing that. They're still going to have the best interest of ASHA at heart. And I feel like that's maybe how the meeting started. I think by the end of the meeting, maybe some of them flipped because of the behavior that we were seeing. So back to the times, you know, the 15, 30 minute, why wouldn't they entertain it? It was already done. ASHA wrote the codes. Those codes were approved and set for implementation on January 1st. Option A, which was our first option, would have deleted everything and took us back to the drawing board, and that's where we would have addressed time. Option B didn't touch the time at all. So this wasn't let's create and edit entirely new things because that changes the value. This was, we are only talking about the language that is written in front of us. And that is why Mr. Happy Pants shut a lot of you down, because you kept talking about time or saying things that had already been said. Now, was he nice about it? Absolutely not. We did know that he acted like that. Lori and Phil have been working on this since November. That's how long this has been going on. Lori was able to observe the last meeting virtually so she could see how those question and answer sessions went, because she was going to be the one up there at the table. And then later I came on, and then Ivy signed on and sent their medical director. So Lori saw that that was how he behaved. So we were all prepared for that. He was not as bad on day one as he was on day two. I think one of the earlier tabs before us, that's what they're called, tabs, not applications. It was a pretty rough one too. And that's when we started seeing some of that. And I think by the time speech pathologist started in, he was over it. So he could have been nicer. He was the chair of the editorial panel. So there was a table, like we were sitting back here. He was, like a judge, elevated, and directly in front of us, it was a square. On the other side of the square, and then on each side were two tables looking in, and that's the doctors who were talking. That's where they were sitting, on our right and our left. And they were the editorial advisory panel. So they were the ones who got to decide which options came forward. They were the ones who got to decide if they were writing other options. And then there were about 450 people at long tables all around. And those were the 200 voting members total, including that advisory panel. So the rest of the doctors that voted on the codes were there at those tables, but they didn't get to talk. They just got to vote. They weren't exactly following Robert's Rules of Order. I don't know if it was some other version of running a meeting or if it was the AMA version, but it was his job to keep people on track, make sure the questions were relevant, make sure that there wasn't anything repetitive, etc. It is our belief that they would have not let that thing go nearly 2 hours if they weren't going to entertain us, because they don't want to work on Saturday. And because of us, they were working this morning. The meeting ran over. So I think we had a chance, especially by the end. You saw what he was doing. He was as condescending to our friends as they were being towards us. With that being said, you saw how ASHA behaved in this meeting. I don't need to explain it to you. If you weren't there, trust your friends who are furious, or trust the people you don't know who are furious. It was unacceptable. How was I the reasonable one in the room? Okay. It just, anytime someone said something that they didn't agree with, we heard about it, right? And so this wasn't a discussion. What we saw in many of the other tabs was national orgs sitting at the table, presenting their thing, people making comments, and collaboration and compromise happening. That's not what we received, and we were ready for that. Every time you pay for an ASHA product, the CCC, the Learning Pass, a conference, a special talk, you are funding what you saw. And what they did yesterday is not new, right? I am often accused as a troublemaker, a hater. She just wants to create a national organization. She's only doing this for money. No, this is how they behave. And I think sometimes it takes seeing it with your own eyes to finally understand that this is what they do. And so it's time to start thinking about if you're going to continue to support them. And if you're stuck, then let's talk about it. If you have to have the CCC, let's talk about why. And my employer requires it, often isn't good enough if you haven't done the work and had the conversation with your employer. My state requires it for Medicaid billing, isn't good enough if you haven't done the work to overturn that in your state. We have literally changed or are going through the process of changing laws via Medicaid so SLPs don't have to have the Cs in their states anymore. I have the resources, the knowledge, and the know-how to help all of you change that, but I can't do it because your states don't want to talk to me. I'm not a stakeholder. They want to talk to you. So if you are in a Medicaid state, I need 2 to 3 people. I have lists of people in every state who want to do something, but no one wants to lead. We're not asking you to do what I did yesterday. We're asking you to organize 2 or 3 people, write some letters, send out some stamps, get some stickers, go to some meetings if you have to. A lot of you are new. Maybe a year ago, maybe less, Delaware was trying to implement the CCC permanently for all licensed SLPs. We fought back and won, okay? I drove 13 hours in one day to Delaware and back to attend a state board meeting because none of the SLPs who were working on this could go. Sustaining partner money paid for my gas. So that's how we're using the money. So I can fight with you, I can be next to you, but I can't do the fight for you. You can go to fixslp.com, resources for SLPs, Medicaid. There's a map that's not updated because West Virginia, you made the change. Good job. I haven't changed the map. So it's one more down. Take a look and see if Medicaid is required in your state. So these are the things that we need to do. I can't do all of it. I think what happened yesterday was a turning point for SLPs. We can let this be a moment in time that we let pass with the 24-hour news cycle, or it can be a moment in time where 25 years from now, you're telling your new SLPs, I was there when. Because something shifted yesterday. I deeply believe that. Win or lose, something started to change. And I'm not the only person who believes that. This is our chance to make a difference for ourselves, for the people we serve, and for the SLPs behind us, because this is an awesome profession. I love my job. I hate the crap. Okay? I love sticking cameras in people's noses and watching them swallow. I'm sick. Okay? I love it. And in my advocacy talk, which by the way, if any of you are on your state boards, I do keynote advocacy talks. I always say, we were all built for something. I'm an Enneagram 1. Read about it. That's my role. I'm not the connector. I'm not the doer. I'm not the encourager. I'm the screamer. So, okay, that's my role. Every single one of you has a role. There's 9 Enneagram numbers, if that's what you're going by. And we need all 9 people, or many of each 9 people, to get things done. We need everybody. It's like a little puzzle piece, okay? We need everybody doing something because it's a moment in time that we can let pass or we can use to our advantage and keep the momentum going. So, the last piece I want to address that I keep seeing online now is, well, I'm so sick of ASHA, I want out, I can't because what about the students? What about the students? I was an externship coordinator during COVID. I know about the students, okay? The topic coming up will include student supervision and CAA requirements because right now they are in the process of changing CAA requirements. I went through the new requirements. You can look at them right now. You can go download them. The requirement of the CCC for supervision is not in the CAA requirements. The CAA requirements to be credited are what universities follow. It's not in there. So I have to keep my CCC so I can supervise students? stop taking students for 1 semester, for 2 semesters, and the university will change its policy because it won't have any supervisors. It's going to hurt for a minute. It's going to hurt for a minute, but it doesn't have to be forever, okay? The students will be fine. This is not COVID-19. I graduated an entire cohort during COVID-19 when there were no placements at all, okay? We figured it out at the university level. There will still be people because guess what? If they make an exception, you can supervise the student. All you need is your state license. In no state is there a requirement that you have your CCC for student supervision. The requirement comes if you want to purchase the CCC. Here's the second point. ASHA has a pathway for audiologists to get supervised hours after graduation for audiology students if they weren't supervised by a CCC holder while they were in school. There's a pathway. Do you think they let us use it? No, they don't. Why? Because as soon as they do, you all drop your CCC and they lose all their money, okay? Until you make it hurt, this doesn't change. You have to stop taking students. And that hurts me. I'm a professor. I love students. I love teaching. Supervising is fun. I like students. Until you make the university hurt, they're not going to change anything. I am old enough to remember when we had to have an equal number of adult treatment and evaluation hours and pediatric treatment and evaluation hours. Universities had a very difficult time finding those equal hours, okay? They threw a fit because it was an actual policy. They threw a fit and the policies changed to what it is now, a breadth and depth of hours. They did that so universities could do whatever the hell they wanted to do, okay? You could literally go through a program and have all pediatric hours and still get your degree because universities complained and they changed it. And that was an actual policy. This isn't even an actual policy. And I guarantee you, if students stop getting supervised hours, and they're graduating without CCC hours, what comes next? ASHA opens up that pathway because by God, they need our money, right? They're not going to open up the pathway until they stop losing money. $29 for membership makes a statement. It doesn't hurt them enough. $250 does. And then the business owners listening, every lawyer that I have talked to for nearly 3 years has said, why would people in this profession that you're representing pay this money when you can do this for free by having employers discontinue requiring the CCC? Every lawyer I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot, every single one of them has said, get employers to stop requiring the CCC, and this is over for ASHA. That's it. We need a safe place for students who are graduating without the CCC to go. They have to have jobs. And guess what? If they're graduating without the CCC, your jobs can also supervise those students. There is a very easy answer here. And so all of these people saying, what can we do? How can we support you? Talk to your employer. Start there. It's May. You have 7 months to change policies. With Medicaid, it can be done in 7 months. With Medicaid, with your employer. So by December 31st, you don't have to renew. And it really is that easy. When we changed Medicaid in Michigan, Blue Cross Blue Shield was still requiring it. It took us 2 months to find the right person. Once we did it was one phone call. We talked to the lady. She'd gotten the thing. She's like, oh, this is a legacy policy. This was supposed to change after the license went into effect. 15 years ago. She was like, that's not a problem. We'll remove it. Took one phone call. That was it. One phone call. Okay, that's how easy it was to remove the CCC requirement from Blue Cross Blue Shield in Michigan. So with that being said, the information is published on May 15th. People are very worried about money. We have a lot of information that you don't have. And I think even if this thing passes, generally we should still be okay. We are still going to have problems, I think. I think there will be denials. There will be language that we can't lean into if ASHA's approved proposal prevails. I think you saw from me, especially as the only adult person at that table and on the team, that we weren't going to roll over and shut up. And I was going to die trying to get cognitive included in the language, because there is no way to bill. If you have insurers who aren't covering cognitive, there's no way for you to bill, and that is an entire population that's going to lose service on January 1st if you can't bill cognitive. Everybody else on our application team was pediatric except for me, and it was a rough road for you guys. The number of times I said, as the adult SLP here, I don't think that's going to work for us. It would have been nice to have some support, but we made it. So we're going to call it. Thanks again, guys. I'm sorry I can't say exactly what happened, but hopefully I'll get to write the tell-all via a series of posts. So have a good night. Happy Better Hearing and Speech Month. Bye, guys.